Hello and welcome to Overcoming Trauma. I am your Christian trauma recovery strategist, Mel. Today I want to talk about numbness, when you just feel like you can't feel anything either spiritually, physically, or emotionally. Throughout most of my life, I always felt like people never understood me. They didn't understand me, and that is because they had not been through what I had been throughout my life since I was a child. Whenever I was misunderstood or told there was something wrong with me, I would literally just zone out and go numb because I didn't want to be hurt, be anxious, or be scared. It was a trauma response and my body's way of protecting me through disassociating myself from what was happening. Later, I would find out that these were actually spirits tormenting me. The trauma response I had kept me feeling very much secluded and alone. I would shut up my emotions and tell no one but God because when I did, no one understood how my brain functioned or my thought processes. I dive deep into depression and isolate myself from others, and I would just wish to die. I truly believed that how I responded, through anger, through hate, through pushing people away, through numbing out, I had justification for doing it all, and I was in the right and everyone else was wrong. I had a deep spirit of pride. I wasn't realizing that this behavior was trauma-induced. I never knew that this wasn't normal because in the house I grew up in, I seen this all the time. The rages of anger, the drunkenness, the hatred, the gossiping, the put-downs, the neglect, it all seemed normal behavior, and sadly, most people think the same way that have gone through trauma until they see it for themselves on the other side. Why do certain destructive patterns seem to repeat in families? Almost like a cycle that's impossible to break. The influence of generational trauma often goes unseen, silently shaping our emotional world. Studies have shown that children of trauma survivors are significantly more likely to exhibit symptoms of anxiety, depression, and emotional dysregulation, even when unaware of the original events. In my own case, my father's anger and drinking were rooted in losing both his parents as a child, while my mother's harshness echoed the verbal abuse she suffered growing up. As children, my siblings and I absorbed these behaviors, thinking they were normal, until I realized much later how deeply they had shaped my own responses to stress. It's tempting to believe, this is just how my family is, there's nothing I can do. But accepting the status quo only perpetuates the cycle of pain. Change becomes possible when you see these patterns for what they are. Identifying generational trauma empowers you to choose a different path. You can begin to unlearn inherited behaviors, fostering healthier relationships for yourself and for those who come after you. Could it be that some of our deepest struggles aren't just psychological, but spiritual battles affecting our identity? The question of where emotional torment comes from can be surprisingly complex. A recent Barna Group survey found that over 60% of people seeking spiritual guidance report persistent, intrusive thoughts and feelings of worthlessness that don't respond to traditional mental health interventions. When I hit my darkest point at age 33, I was exhausted by negative voices in my head and constant anxiety even with a loving family by my side. Focusing on anything, like reading scripture, became a struggle, and I started to believe those voices that told me I was broken beyond repair. Skeptics might say, isn't this just a mental disorder? Shouldn't therapy or medication solve it? I must throw the disclaimer out there that I am not a doctor, therapist, or psychiatrist, but in my journey, I discovered that sometimes these battles have a spiritual dimension, as described in Ephesians 6, where we're told our struggles are against spiritual forces, not just flesh and blood. If you're fighting a relentless internal battle, consider exploring both spiritual and psychological support. Deliverance and healing are possible, and recognizing the spiritual side of suffering can open doors to freedom you might not have imagined. What if freedom from anxiety, fear, and panic is closer than you think? Many people live convinced their struggle will never end, but there is hope for change. Research from the American Psychological Association notes that spiritual practices combined with community and mentorship can increase recovery rates from anxiety disorders by up to 30%. But I am not talking about coping, but freedom. After years of torment, I finally found healing when I embraced spiritual deliverance. When the spirits of fear and anxiety were cast out of me, I became lighter, freer, and almost like meeting a new version of myself. It took months to adjust, but 10 years later, I still walk in that freedom. Some church circles teach that anxiety is just a lack of faith, or that Christians can't be spiritually oppressed. This thinking leaves many suffering in silence, believing their pain is a sign of spiritual failure. If you resonate with my story, I invite you to take practical steps like joining my Redeem workshop to break mental strongholds and rebuild your relationship with God. Healing is possible, and you don't have to walk this journey alone.